today, brother? We're here today. Alright. Welcome to another episode of Stories Through Experiences, guys. This is episode 11, and we have Scott Evans in the chair, who owns Scott's Food Vans. Sorry, I stumbled over my words there, man. I apologise.
It's alright.
How are you today, brother?
Not too bad, man. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good. First off, do you want to tell us what we're doing with your hair today? And whatever we're doing, like hair, beard, everything.
Yep. So I'll do a beard trim, do skin fade.
Yep.
So just go pretty high with it.
Yep. Nice and high skin fade.
Yep. And then at the top, just get the scissors, cut a bit of length off and
so
thin it out.
Nice and short, don't you?
Yep.
Do you like the fringe there, or do you like no
A
fringe?
little bit of, no, take it off.
Take it off?
Yep.
Yeah, easy. And then just fade the beard back in, take it back a little bit?
Yep. So normally just do number one.
Yep.
And then just, sort of shape it and
done.
clean it up.
Done. Alright, well, I'm getting my stuff ready. And also, guys, don't forget to hit like and subscribe on today's episode if it's your first time watching. But do you want to tell us quickly, while I'm getting all my tools ready, do you want to tell us quickly what we're going to be speaking about today?
Mostly just talking about my food truck business, how I started it, and where that's leading to, and then also talking about a diagnosis I got at the start of the year of ADHD and how that affects me in life and all the things I'm learning about that.
Alright, well, let's start with the food van, as it's the first one that you spoke of. Right, I want to hear how you started Scott's Food Van. Scott's Food, I keep stumbling over my words there. Scott's Food Vans, I want to know how that started and where it started from.
So it started years ago. My dad's cousin has an ice cream van, and when I was about 14 or 15, I started working for her.
Yep.
And then through working for her, I met someone else who was doing hot food and started working for them. And we do a lot of event catering and some private stuff. And from that, I just absolutely loved it. And by the time I think it was about 20, I actually bought my own first food van to start out and start on my own.
That was, what age was that? At 20, you said?
Yeah, I think it was about 19 or 20.
19 or 20.
Yeah.
And how much was your first food van? Like, you said it was your first, so what was it like back then, and how much did you pay for it?
I think I paid 12,000 for it, and then by the time I sort of got it up to where I needed it to be, it was about 20,000.
Yep. That's after fit out?
Yeah, it was already an existing van.
Yep.
So it was already done, drove to Melbourne from Canberra to pick it up.
Yep.
And then, just towed it back.
Yeah, nice. So going through like the first year of like owning that food van, the process of buying it, can you tell us a bit of what it was like for you? You know, like what was some of your experiences, successes, challenges, things you had to learn from a little bit? Tell us all about it, bro.
Well, there's lots to learn. It's not quite as easy as what a lot of people think. You just don't turn up anywhere and start selling. The vans themselves, there's a lot to learn about, and I certainly learned a lot of do's and don'ts with my first van. But getting into some of the events and that can be quite challenging, and then trying to come up with a menu that's a bit different. Because a lot of the time you might approach an event and say, I've got this sort of menu, and they'll say, oh no, we've already got that, so we don't need that, and it sort of pushes you out of the market straight away. So sort of coming up with something a little bit different or something that's not as common. And it was a bit difficult too, entering into it being so young, because back then there was a lot of people that had been in it for many years that were probably in their sort of 40s and 50s. And it was a bit interesting being the new kid on the block coming in. Some of them didn't really like it all that much, because I sort of hit the market pretty hard and fast, and did sort of eventually start getting into a lot of things. So, but there's lots to learn, and even 13 years on, I'm still learning.
So So being that first year and going to like hitting it hard fast in those events, did you manage to get a lot of events in that first year, or was that a challenge to get into in that first year?
I did get into quite a few events, but the biggest challenge was learning which ones to go for. So, like some events, they'll sell it and say, "Oh, we're going to have all these people," but it may not be kind of what they tell you.
Yeah.
So you sort of got to learn how to gauge events, and you just get to know what the actual realistic numbers may be. But one of the other major challenges is weather. So obviously being outside in the elements, you can do an event, it can be fantastic, but if it ends up raining, it can be all over.
You hit upon one thing, like there's two things I'm gonna ask you about both of what you just said. The first one being, like planning for an event, not knowing how many people are going to be there at the time. How is it you predict? Is it something you go on, like a number of tickets have been sold with the venue organisers? Or is it just something you kind of have to look at the event and see previous numbers and say, look, I'll bring this much of this much of this much and this much, How do you gauge on an event on how much to bring and then that?
It gets easier. If you do the same event each year, it gets easier because you sort of get the experience that way. But yeah, it really is a guessing game. Sometimes you just don't know how many people are going to turn up. Sometimes they might, if it's an event that's been already existing, they can sort of give you rough numbers. But then you've also got to find out how many other food vans you're going to have there, what are they selling. So there's lots of different factors.
Yes. And like also, because I'm going to hit you hard. I want to hit you hard on this first year, So a first year for a lot of people looking to get in this, a lot of the information may prove helpful, right? So what were some of those failures you experienced in that first year where you had to change dramatically or something? You completely had to change your approach.
Well, thankfully I didn't sort of have too many failures because even though I was starting out on my own, I sort of still had some experience because I'd worked for others as well. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't going in completely blind like some people do if they're completely new to the actual whole food truck scene. I'm just trying to think of anything. One of the riskier ones I've found to do are music festivals.
Really?
Yeah. I did Groove in the Moo for a couple of years. And the first year we did it, and that was actually in my earlier days. The first year...
Was it back in 2016?
No, it would have been earlier than that, I think.
All right, cool.
I think.
That was the last time I was like Groove in the Moo.
Okay. Yeah, they can be really hit and miss. You can still get the crowds, but sometimes they spend, sometimes they don't. So like the first year I did it, we smashed it. All the food trucks were actually flat out from the moment they opened the gates to when they closed them. And then the second year when I did it, I only just covered costs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, so all the food truck operators, we stood around looking at each other for the first 4 hours of the event going, what's going on? So, and they're actually really quite expensive to do as well.
Expensive in what way?
Well, they charge us fees to be there.
Is that ranging from your insurance to their insurance? Is it ranging from you're giving them a piece of the cost to...
Some of them...
Exactly what way?
Some of them operate differently. So some of them might charge you a percentage of what you take. And some of them just have like a set fee.
Yep.
So they might say, just for example, it's $2,000 to come and trade at this event for the day.
Or some may want to, some may do it by percentage of what you make.
Yeah, so some might say, you just pay us 15% of your overall turnover.
What's the more typical that you find?
A set fee, generally.
A set fee?
Yeah.
Yep. And what sort of events do you typically like to target? Speaking of events that, are riskier, as you said, music festivals, right? So what do you like to? What sort of events do you prefer to go to? Where do you like to bring your food truck?
I actually generally like a lot of the smaller stuff. I do a job in Goulburn once a year. That's an alpaca thing. And I've done that for about 8 years. And it's really enjoyable to do that one because it's the same group of people each time.
Yeah.
So it's only small, but it's really enjoyable. You get to sort of know them a bit more personally. I don't really do too many markets. Markets can sort of be... Trouble is with markets, you kind of got to commit to them. They sort of want a commitment. So if it's a market that's sort of every fortnight, something they want you there every fortnight.
Yeah, not once every fortnight, you know.
Yeah,
not once a fortnight when you can do it.
Yeah. So that's a bit tricky for me. So I sort of stay clear of a lot of those. But yeah, I do a lot of other randomest stuff.
Yeah.
I used to do summer nats. I did that for a few years.
I feel like that one would be closer to a music festival. Hit and miss.
I think summer nats has changed a fair bit. Well, it has changed a lot. And see, now they're creating a lot more entertainment in Braddon area. So what I was finding was, for us vendors inside the gates, they were starting to have more things happening in the city, which was drawing a lot of people out there, as opposed to being in the gates at Exhibition Park. So you still get a lot of people there, but see all the nighttime...
people as well that aren't at summer nats that are doing like summer nats activities outside.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not spending as much time and as much of their money inside the gates now. That's just what I was finding.
Fair. And so we'll get on to that second challenge you spoke of as well, weather. You know? So how does that impact it all? Like, is it something that you have to always prepare for beforehand? Or, you know, like, do you always have to have something to pull out for cover? Or is it just hope it doesn't rain?
Yeah, you just got to hope it doesn't rain.
Just gotta...
It's very challenging if you're operating in marquees.
Yeah.
I thankfully have not... I only do one job a year, which actually operates 4 times a year that I do marquee setup, but that's inside. The rest are in my food vans. But yeah, the weather plays a massive, massive role in the success of an event. So, I mean, if you go there and it's going to rain, that can heavily impact. And sometimes it can cancel the event altogether.
Yeah.
So you can be packed, loaded, ready to go and receive a phone call or email, you know, the night before or the morning of and say, oh, look, I'm really sorry, we've had to cancel our event. We just had pretty extreme weather here in Canberra and I lost 2 jobs in a row at schools because of the weather.
And that was recently?
Yeah, that was just not last week, the week before.
Yeah, I remember the weather we had there. That was pretty brutal rain we had coming through.
Yeah, and so at this time of year, you got all the schools doing all their Christmas carols and all their Christmas events and end of year stuff. So they're sort of running a lot of things. And unfortunately, a lot of them had to cancel it.
So you also hit upon doing jobs in Goulburn. Is Goulburn the only place you do take your food truck outside of Canberra? Or how far do you go? You know, on a regular basis or once on a basis. How far do you take your food truck for a job? And what's involved in that, once again?
So generally, I don't travel. I just stick around Canberra. The main places I go would be Yass. So I do a fair few jobs a year in Yass. And yeah, just the one a year in Goulburn.
Yep.
I've been to Bowning a few times.
To where?
Bowning.
Yep.
But yeah, I generally don't travel because for me, travel starts to bring your costs up.
Yep.
And it's also hard to get staff to go with you as well because, you know, all my staff are just casuals.
Yep.
And they've all got, you know, full-time jobs generally. So it's a bit challenging for me in my circumstances to sort of travel.
And how long have you been in the food truck game for now? You said you got in at about 19, 20, so how old are you now?
Yeah, so 34. So yeah, it must be about 14 years.
Yeah, 14, 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it is longer than I thought actually.
And you said you've got four vans. So what's business like now? You know that you've got these 4 vans. You know, like it's certainly got to be more of an administrative role, or are you still out in the field?
So I still go out and work the vans themselves. I have the amount of vans I do so that I can operate or offer different menus. So 2 of them are hot food ones, and then the other 2 are coffee and ice cream, so like Mr. Whippy stuff.
Oh yeah, cool.
So it gives me a really big range of events I can go to, which is for me, you know, being solely just operating food trucks. Like I don't have any other job. That's all I do. That's been the key success part for me, is having that range of product to offer.
Yep.
And then on top of those, I actually also have a school canteen as well.
Yeah. I knew someone that did a bit of school canteen work when I was younger.
Yeah.
She had a couple of them going.
Yeah.
She was also batshit fucking crazy. Right, she was also batshit fucking crazy. What's it like running a school canteen for you?
Yeah, it's good. It's quite heavily governed in what we can and can't sell. So it's got to be a lot of the healthier range. But it actually was quite successful anyway. So it's been not too bad.
And what sort of hot food does your other 2 vans specialise in? Like, are you doing just fried food, or what are you doing there if it's slightly different?
So one of them does baked potatoes and nachos, so like the loaded baked potatoes.
Yep.
And then we can sort of do chips in that. And then the other one, we can sort of change the menu in that one to suit the event and what they're wanting. But generally, it'll just do like a range of burgers, Kranskis, hot chips, hot dogs. Sometimes I'll put a coffee machine in there, cold drinks, slushies. We sort of just work it out with the event organizer, what they're needing.
Yep.
And we just run with that.
Yeah, fair call. Nearly done on getting this all back to skin. During COVID, what was it like then actually for you, right? Did you even, were you even able to operate your food vans at all?
So, yeah, COVID obviously, like for everyone, presented a lot of challenges. Obviously, when it came through, we didn't really know what it was, what was happening. All of a sudden, we had to shut down. We had full books for events. Within 2 days, I just had email after email saying they've had to cancel them. So that was extremely difficult, going from having, you know, a good amount of work to all of a sudden literally nothing. No answers as to how long we were going to be out of work for and what was happening. But luckily, we, being the industry, the hospitality industry, it was classified as an essential service. So I had to start thinking outside of the square, and, you know, with no events, which is what I rely on for my work, I had to basically start creating my own work. And that, probably the biggest part of that was I actually traded in Yass Thursday and Friday nights for quite some time.
Just going out there, parking up and just serving food?
Yeah, so just as basically like a takeaway shop.
Yeah.
And Yass worked really, really well for us because Yass is actually a really foodie town. Whenever they have events there, people come out even just for the food. There's more now, just recently, but there's not a great deal of food available in Yass. So they really like it when something pulls up. They always come out and give it a go.
Yeah, something new to eat other than what they're usually eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the big saving grace. And the other thing I did was when the restrictions started to ease a little bit and people were allowed out for recreational purposes, I then jumped in the ice cream van, hit up Facebook, and Dunlop was actually one of my most successful locations. I just went onto their Facebook page and said, I'm going to be here at this time for this amount of time with ice cream, come out, and they came out in droves. I couldn't believe it. I just went from thinking I could possibly lose everything here to actually being okay. So I had to, create my own work and spots, and I wasn't used to that. But luckily it worked really well for us.
Do you think that it's improved your business, like all that work and all that thinking you've had to do, right, especially in such a crisis situation for the business, right? Do you think that's helped you grow as a business completely as well? Has it helped you open up to new opportunities, new avenues? Has it helped you work on things in different strategies that you didn't really know how to work on before? How's that gone for you?
Yeah, like it probably, I suppose, maybe built my confidence a little bit too, in the sense that, like I was saying before, I always sort of relied on the events thinking, oh, this is my business, this is what I rely upon. But yeah, it's sort of like going into Yass and doing what we're doing was so successful because of the shutdown. So to go and do it now, it wouldn't be anywhere near as successful as it was.
Yeah.
But one thing I have remained doing was in that COVID time when things were starting to ease, I started taking the ice cream van down to Jasper, down to the campgrounds. And 2 or 3 years on, I'm still doing that in the summer holidays, and that's been very successful. And that's something I never would have contemplated doing before COVID, before I had to sort of start thinking, where can I go? What can I do?
I like a lot of what you've had to do to overcome a lot of these challenges, and a lot of it's just simply just trying to reach out in a whole different way to what you're doing typically. Where you're typically used to going out to a planned event. You've had to go somewhere and be like, you know what? People are either going to come or they're not.
Yeah.
I'm either going to sell a few burgers or ice creams, being at Wee Jasper or Yass or wherever you've been at that time, or I'm not. The only way to find out now is to go take that risk right now. Yeah. So I like a lot of what you've done there, because that will take a lot of, it takes that mental battle of do, don't, do, don't, do, don't. So I have to give you some respect for that.
Yeah, thanks, man.
There we go. So now I want to start getting into, like a lot of what it was like with your ADHD. I sense that there's quite a story there, and that also only being diagnosed this year. Why don't you start telling me all about that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of backstory with that. It's been a hell of a ride, basically, trying to find out. For many years, I've always known there's something not quite right. Just the way my thinking was. But yeah, I started seeing a mental health team and that because I was struggling a lot mentally, having a lot of bad depression. Originally was diagnosed with severe depression. And after a while, I started saying to the psychologist, look, I think there's more going on here for me than just depression. And they were sort of like, oh, no, I think it's just that. We're just, it just all takes time. We've just got to work through it. But yeah, fast forward a lot. I sort of started doing a lot of my own research on mental health and possibly what more, if anything, could be going on for me. And ADHD was actually something I never looked into and never thought to look into, because I think a lot of people sort of think of ADHD as just a naughty little kid running around uncontrollable, but that's not always the case. Like, that wasn't the case for me. And there's so much more to it than that. But yeah, it was funny. I got onto the ADHD watching TikTok, of all things. Just flicking through one day, and this random video came up, and it was something like, 5 symptoms of ADHD you would never have thought, would be ADHD. And I listened to it, and I ticked all of them, and I was like, well, that's interesting.
Well, fuck.
Yeah, and ADHD has a lot of hyper focus, and I'd certainly got hyper focused on it at that point. And I was like, did heaps of reading, watched heaps of videos, and I was like, this is actually worth exploring. But yeah, it's been quite a difficult journey to get to the diagnosis, and it still continues to try and help that. But it's funny, like, I'm still learning a lot about it, and also learning a lot about myself as well. It's provided a lot, like a diagnosis of that has provided a lot of answers, but also a lot of questions as well.
So what happened, after the TikTok and like a lot of what you were going through? What was it that, when was it that you actually went and asked someone to start going through the diagnosis period? And what was that like, and a lot of those sorts of steps for you?
So like, I ended up, I was struggling for a long time mentally, and eventually things just got really, really tough for me, and it just sort of blew up and actually ended up in an attempt. And, and things actually got a bit harder from there, because then my relationship broke down. And that sort of started a whole heap of other stuff. But at the same time, I just became determined to find out what is going on, and I need help. And at the time, I just wasn't getting it. With the psychologist, I was seeing them quite regularly, and the whole time I'm thinking there's more going on here. I feel like I'm getting a bit of help with some things, but then it felt to me like there was a whole area just not being touched. And I had to push and push and push to try and get to where I am now, which is basically with a diagnosis. And it wasn't easy, because, the mental health system is just so overran, particularly since COVID. It's so difficult to get any help at all, and also extremely expensive.
So what are some of the costs that you had to go through? I feel like that's a pretty quick one. While we start getting into heavier details, we'll get the cost out of the way. Because the cost is a big thing for a lot of people. Money's not easy.
Yeah. Well, I think in the time that I was seeing my psychologist, I had certainly spent probably around about $4,000 in visits there, and which again sort of never really amounted to a great deal of help for me. Like I said, to a point. There was multiple GP visits as well, but the biggest one was eventually when I was able to get an assessment for the ADHD. I had to go to Sydney for that, and I think the assessment cost me around about $1,300. Mm-hmm. But what also happened was I was assessed by a psychologist. Now, you've got psychologists and then you've got psychiatrists, and psychiatrists are the ones that can
medicate you. But
medicate.
The psychologist is the one that has to diagnose you in this point?
So you can be diagnosed by either, and this is what I learned. I knew that a psychologist could not medicate me if I wanted to go down that road.
No, but they can diagnose you.
But what I learned was a psychiatrist will not accept a diagnosis from a psychologist for ADHD. So I waited months and months to get that assessment. I paid a fortune and basically came out of it. I had the diagnosis,
But they wouldn't accept it.
but I still couldn't get medicated. So I sort of hit another roadblock. I think it was like from when I first started looking down the ADHD road to when I actually got my diagnosis, it was something crazy like 2 years, two and a half years.
In the whole process.
Yeah. And
Holy
then,
fuck.
and then I got lucky here in Canberra. There was a fairly new clinic that opened up that had a new psychiatrist who specialises in ADHD. And I think I ended up waiting about 3 months to see her. So I went and saw her. She did have a look at the assessment that was done before. She then had me answer a whole heap of questions. And then she basically said, yeah, look, you've scored pretty highly for it. So I'm pretty confident that, this is correct. So I have started to be medicated for it now. And this is still very early days for that. But the medication that I'm currently on, I've had to stop taking because it was actually giving me really bad anxiety. So I've got to wait to get back to her now to change it to something else. So the journeys kind of never end because you sort of, they keep beginning in different sections. So now I've got the diagnosis. That was a huge journey by itself. And then, doing the medication is another new journey in itself. So there's lots of different medications. Everyone reacts differently to medications. Some works really well, some it doesn't. They might change it to something else, and then they might change the dosage if it's not quite right. So it could even still be another 2-year process before
you're actually on
get that right as well.
Really
Yeah. And then also the psychological side of it too, that that I sort of ideally would like to get assistance with as well.
Yeah.
So I think that second, sorry, just going back to your costs, that second assessment I had, it was nowhere near as intense as the first one. I think that one was around $700 or $800. So it's cost me a bit over $2,000 to actually get to a point where I've been assessed, diagnosed, and medicated.
Yeah. Now, you said the medication that you were on gave you a lot of anxiety. What was that medication for you?
Ritalin.
Ritalin?
So, yeah, and I think, as far as I know, that's pretty well the standard one they start a lot of people on.
Yep.
And it was funny because the first 4 or 5 weeks was actually really, really good. It helped me a lot. It helped slow my brain down a lot. I was able to focus a lot better. And see, that's what those stimulant medications do for people that have ADHD.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was going really well. So I actually got the feel of, I suppose, what you could say, normal,
Peace.
normal, peace, quiet. But yeah, then just suddenly I just started getting all this anxiety, and we did, she did change from a short acting to a long acting or long lasting Ritalin. But unfortunately it didn't make any difference as far as the anxiety goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, at the moment I just got to wait to get back to her, which I think might be about February, before I can try something else.
So are you still taking that same medication now?
No.
Alright, cool. What's it like when you're taking the medication, other than the anxiety, to now as well? Are you still anxious without the medication? Or are
No.
you just less anxious?
No, it's funny, like anxiety is actually something I've never really had much of. Even when I've had really bad depression, I've never actually had much in the way of anxiety. Only with that medication. So yeah, and that is actually a common side effect of that medication is anxiety. So a lot of people that try it may have to change because of that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for me, yeah, that's been the case. So I'll have to try something different. But it's very difficult with ADHD to get medicated because it's stimulant based medications. They do have to be very careful because a lot of people want it for parties.
I've met a few of those people.
Yeah. So
I've met a few of those people growing up.
yeah. So you're supposed to keep it locked up, and it's very heavily governed. So for us, for those people that have ADHD, it has the opposite effect.
Calms you down.
Yeah, it actually so I suppose in a way, those of us with ADHD are kind of like in party mode all the time in our head, and it gets extremely tiring.
It does. This I have experience with.
Yeah.
I have a lot of experience with that. It does get extremely tiring.
Yeah. Yeah, and see, I don't have the physical hyperactivity, which is why it was never looked into, particularly growing up as a kid.
I think I have the similar, where it's the mental.
Yeah, it's all in the head.
Brain never stops.
Yeah.
It's like on average, you're meant to have 50,000 thoughts a day, right? And I think that I have more.
Yeah, it's probably done in the first 2 hours.
Yeah, it's like I highly think that I have more than 50,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for me, it's all internal, and that's why I find it very difficult to concentrate on a lot of things, remember things. My memory's terrible. I never remember names. There's just too much going on in there. Yeah.
I thought your name was Adam.
Yeah, you did. So, but that's all good.
So, as for medication, right, I have a really good question. Right? And there's some small amounts of proof, that this medicine tends to help more than your medicine. Right? But what about marijuana? Right? I am very curious to see what your doctor would say, or what you would think on marijuana for treating ADD or ADHD. What's your thoughts there?
Well, a lot of people with ADHD, particularly when they're undiagnosed, a lot of them are into that sort of stuff because it does help slow their brain down and helps their symptoms. I think you should be assessed.
Yeah, I highly think I should be assessed, right? I've thought,
but make sure you go to a
psych. The money side. For me, it's strictly. I don't have 2K. My weekly income goes towards bills, and the money that I usually have to survive goes towards the editing. Right? Yeah. And so it's I've got to figure out the cashies throughout the week because all my money goes towards the bills and the editing.
Well, one advice I can give you to save your money is don't go to a psychologist first for an assessment. Go straight to the psychiatrist. And it's amazing through watching TikToks how many people have had that exact same situation.
Yeah.
And I literally have seen so many videos of people, they are in tears. They're crying. They're just saying, I've just finally got in for this assessment. I've been diagnosed. I've paid all this money. And now they tell me, oh, well, we can't medicate you. Some people don't even realize that a psychologist can't medicate.
No, I've definitely known that one for a while.
Yeah. I just couldn't believe that the psychiatrist wouldn't take the psychologist's assessment and diagnosis. But again, because it is ADHD and because of the stimulant drugs, they are just extremely very careful with it.
Yeah. Maybe there's a little war going on between psychologists and psychiatrists. Who knows?
Possibly.
Yeah, probably. It's fuck psychiatrists. Fucking psychologists, we're superior. Yet the psychiatrists won't take their words.
Yeah, you're not good enough for us.
Yeah. Fuck you, dog. So what's life like now that you have that diagnosis, right? Now that you know what it is essentially that has been wrong with you for a while. Like you said, you always knew something was wrong. What's it like now? Is it easier? Is it harder? What's it like now?
Well, like I was saying before, it's provided a lot of answers, but it also brings up more questions. But And yes, I'm still on that journey of finding the right medication. That will help a lot.
Would you try CBD? Right,
Possibly.
that element of marijuana that doesn't get you high.
Well, to be honest, I can't stand marijuana.
Yeah.
So probably not.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I just don't like it at all.
No, because there's like the whole CBD side there where it's like it doesn't do anything for you mentally. What it does is like it doesn't change your mindset at all.
Yeah.
Right? Essentially,
Yeah,
it's the whole other side of it.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like, essentially, it's pretty much closer to fish oil. Yeah, it's pretty much just closer to fish oil.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like, you know, in my whole life, one of the answers it provided, the diagnosis, was I think maybe 2 or 3 times in my life I've tried cocaine.
And it just calmed you down.
And on 3 occasions, it really didn't do anything for me. Like the other people I was with, they're like buzzing and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, this is not doing anything. Like, but I'd also been drinking a little bit too. So I didn't really notice the calmer side of it. But I'm just like, this has not affected me at all. I think you guys are full of shit. You know, I think it's in your head that you got this high and a buzz. And I'm just sitting there going, well, I got nothing. So it sort of explained that. So if anything, I was actually being treated at that time.
But once again, you know, what's the life like for you now that you have the knowledge?
It'll help a lot more with moving forward, particularly in relationships.
Yeah.
So at least now, like sometimes with what I do or the way I think, or even with depression side of it, I mean, even if you're on medication, you still have all your symptoms, but it makes them more manageable. So the issues that are there with ADHD are still there.
They're just not as severe.
Not as severe, but it also helps, I think, like with everyone in any situation, if you have an understanding as to why something is happening. So why has he suddenly have mood changes? Or why has he just suddenly gotten really angry or upset with that little thing? But if people sort of have understanding and know what's going on, it helps a lot.
Yeah.
And I am a big one for saying, look, ADHD is not an excuse for bad behaviour. It's an explanation, but
it's not an excuse.
It's not an excuse. You can't just sit down and say, oh, well, I should get away with that, or I can treat people badly, or be really cranky and snappy all the time because I have ADHD, so it's fine. It's not the case. You're still accountable for what you're doing. But yeah, I think moving forward, particularly going into relationships and that sort of thing, I can actually explain because I've got it forever. I've had it forever and I've got it forever. And it's something that actually does need to be managed all the time. So I think moving forward, it will help a lot in a lot of ways.
How do you manage it now?
In what respect, or in what?
Well, you've just then you've set upon like it's up to me how I manage it, and how I look after it. How do you look after it? How do you manage the mood swings? Because now you've got the knowledge, It's not like you'd be having a mood swing and being like, why am I so angry all of a sudden? It's like now you might have that bit of knowledge of, oh, maybe it's the ADHD or the ADD,
Yeah.
Maybe I take a step back instead of taking a step forward, or has it been anything like that, or is what I'm saying not even part of the experience?
Yeah, I think the main thing that I've learned is with ADHD, you get very overwhelmed very easily and quickly. And obviously, if you're stressed and overwhelmed, all your symptoms and things get a lot harder. And that's one thing with running the business is I've learned to not book too much work and try and make it not as stressful.
Yeah.
So the best way for me to manage it is to try and not have too much going on, either in life or in work, all combined, because you can have just what's really a normal day, but you can still go home and just feel so overwhelmed by it all. So I think for me, what I'm finding is that's the key to just try and take a bit of a step back and just take things a little bit easier, not try and push myself too hard to do something and have that acceptance. It's probably got you quite concerned about yourself.
I've had this concern for a while. I had similar experiences with speed and stuff when I was younger, and other similar substances. You know, where it's like I would take it and I would feel really calm, or I'd end up going to sleep.
Yeah.
You know, I might if I took too much, like I might actually get high. But I have to take way too much. And that's not a pleasant feeling either. Just gives me more anxiety.
And say like energy drinks. Never done the thing for me.
Hate them.
Yeah, I don't like the taste, but even I've never got a boost from them. It's quite the opposite. And that's what they say. Caffeine actually puts ADHD to sleep.
Well, I get this tired anxiety from it. I don't know if do you get the same thing, like a weird tired anxiety?
Not really.
It's like because I can drink coffee, I can drink energy drinks, still go to sleep fairly easily, but it's like I still get like a big anxious feeling, you know, if that makes sense. Like I'm not wired and I can sit there. No, I can't sit there when I'm anxious. I really can't. But I don't have heaps of energy either. I'm actually quite tired from it. Well, maybe that's just my typical anxiety.
Well, look, everyone's different. So you can put two ADHD people together. They'll have a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences. And that's the same with everything. Depression, bipolar.
How do you think ADHD has played into your business? You know, do you think it's been at times a hindrance, at times, you know, a strength, or what do you think of, you know, what ADHD has done for you and your career?
I think it's it's helped in a lot of ways. A lot of people say ADHD can be a superpower. I don't like that saying, to be honest. But yeah, if you are interested in something, you can actually focus on it really well and actually excel at it. But you can also lose interest in things very quickly as well. And once you lose that interest, it's gone.
Yeah.
They call it like ADHD paralysis. And everyone's like this. Like, if you don't want to do something, it's really hard to get up and do it. But it's even harder. It's like you've got someone... I've always explained my brain like I've got 3 or 4 different people in there trying to control my one brain, and they've all got different opinions, wants, and needs. So one minute I'll be like this, then, you know, wanting to do this, and the next minute I don't want to do it, and then next time I want to see this person, and then I don't want to see that person, and it's kind of very much like that.
So let's get this one little bit I accidentally missed. Beautiful. And just last time, we'll get you put your head back, and we'll just get... I'm going to probably keep it at that midway point around about here.
Yep.
Just so you don't have it too close to that jawline. But also, I think another point actually for me where I started to realise, and this was as I got older and found out about the hyper focus, was that when I was younger, um, reading books, right? Reading books, it was the only thing that could fairly much, not that I was super hyperactive, but it was the only thing that could stop me. You know, that would actually just stop me from actually completely moving. And I used to be able to read 600-page book in one day. Unfortunately, I can't do that anymore, partly because I just don't have the interest to. I don't have the time to. And I think I've got, a small amount of brain damage from when I was younger doing dumb shit. So I typically get more into audiobooks these days. But when I was younger, it was being able to sit there and read a Harry Potter book in a day if I really fucking had to. And understanding that whole book as it goes. We'll just, one more. We'll just get... Because when I seem to focus on something, I just seem to go full gung-ho and focus. When I actually finally made the decision to start the show and put whatever money, little money I had saved at that time, towards it, it was I managed to get everything done. And I managed to get all the right stuff I needed. I managed to get just everything was just seemed to fall into place because I was just hyper focused and just completely obsessed with getting this started. But then I've been on the other side of that too, where it's if you gain an interest in something, then 10 seconds, it feels like 10 seconds later. Not that it exactly is, but 10 seconds later, you just lost interest in it completely, and you just never really fucking look at it again.
Yeah.
I have that with a lot of audiobooks. It's I'm going to fucking download this book. It seems so interesting. And I'll tell you what, I get fucking 5 minutes into it, right? And then I lose it. Yeah, it's gone. My brother's how'd you go reading that book? And it's really good, man. Great. And I'm just bullshitting my way through it, being I didn't read that book. I lost interest in it. I never want to look at the title again. I never even want to see it.
See, for me, I've never got into reading because if I try to read a book, my mind starts thinking of other things. So I'm literally still reading in my head, but my mind is thinking of something else completely different.
Yeah.
And then I'll get to the end of the page and go, what? So I have to start it again. And I hardly watch TV.
Because you can't sit
and
down.
Movies. It's just unless it really grabs my attention early, I just can't watch it. And it's a really bad thing, but I'm always on my phone. TV just doesn't interest me. There's such rubbish on there.
Yeah.
And whereas on my phone, if I'm whether watching it's TikToks or whatever, you just keep scrolling because you find the interesting thing.
What about YouTube?
Don't do as much YouTube since TikTok came out. TikTok is where I spend most of my time.
I do. I don't know. At the moment, I have a real rage with TikTok because all it does is keep showing me slick back dance videos. Right? Constantly, all I keep hearing on my phone is slick back. Right? All the time. All the fucking time. Or then whatever dances are trending at the time. And I can't seem to get my feed to get to a point where it's actually showing me shit I want to fucking see.
Well, it depends. It depends on what you normally look up. It'll sort of just link those sort of things generally.
Typically, I want barber videos and hair videos and random funny shit.
Yeah. Well, if you type those in quite a few times, it should start pretty much bringing a lot of that up.
Maybe I should just sit there for a day and fuck the algorithm in my phone.
Yeah. But I think like with ADHD, there's a lot of annoying comments with it, oh, everyone has ADHD, but the thing is with it is it's all things that everyone has. So
It's just to an extreme.
It's a lot more extreme. So either depression, overwhelm, stress, mind that doesn't stop. Everyone has that, but only to a certain point. Whereas if you've got ADHD, it's a lot more extreme. It's like we feel our emotions and feelings a lot stronger as well. And one thing, someone might say something and it sort of really upset me, and I wouldn't understand why it upset me so much. And someone else would be like, oh, get over it. Like, oh, I understand it wasn't nice what that person said or whatever, but why does that upset you so much? And I'm like, well, I don't know, but it just does. And those sort of things are really hard to deal with because it's kind of silly, but then, and that's where a lot of the depression then starts to come in.
I have one question actually, and this one, like I half believe in, I half don't. Right, but there's some people that say that ADD or ADHD is trauma-based. What do you think on that? Well, if I look at mine, I'd say, yeah, probably.
Yeah, but ADHD is something that you were virtually born with. It's within the brain already.
Yeah, there's some people that
if you have traumas as a child, it can make it a lot worse, yes, because then you've got triggers and it'll play on it a lot worse. But something like BPD, so borderline personality disorder, a lot of the time that is based on trauma. That is where that stems from. But ADHD does not stem 100% from trauma. But trauma can certainly make it a lot worse and a lot harder. That's from my understanding anyway.
Fair cool.
And probably of the 3,000 TikToks I've watched on it. There's actually a lot of really good people on there with it.
TikTok's a huge fucking base, man. I'm trying to build that TikTok and it's extremely hard.
Yeah, stuff like that's not as easy as people think. You've got to get people interested, but I think maybe you need to do something negative to get the ball rolling. That's why a lot of some of the celebrities
do my first hostage haircut interview.
Yeah, but that's why some of the celebrities they go down because they said something and it hits the media big time, and even though it's a negative thing, it's got their name out there. It gets everyone knowing about them, and it can actually in time become more of a positive thing for them.
As they say, there's no such thing as bad media.
Yeah.
No news is bad news, or yeah.
So maybe if you sort of slice someone's ear off and then you can hit TikTok with the barber that sliced someone's ear off.
I've done that once actually.
Oh, well, you weren't filming
that one was like a bit of a funny one.
Maybe you should have told me that when you finished, not while you're still going.
Add some excitement to it. It was early on in my apprenticeship and I've been doing this close to 8 years. So it was when I was in my first 3 years. And it was just...
well, you're allowed to screw up when you're learning.
Yeah. Yeah, this kid will never forget. It was like
well, no, because he's only got half an ear.
It's like the chunk that I'm holding here.
Yep.
Yeah, it was like just moving wrong time.
Ooh.
And my scissors have come down.
Ooh.
All like pretty much what I'm holding was just all gone.
Yeah.
And so that kid will never forget that, and I will never forget that either. I have never forgotten that. Probably like the biggest reason in my career that I would actually sit there, even if it's like 10 minutes, right? And like give the kid the clippers and be like, this is what we're doing, especially if it's their first haircut.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll give them the clippers and be like, here you go, you can give the clippers on me, and actually give them a chance to see what they'll do, or like let them touch their hands so they see they won't hurt. They just might get a bit of a tickle.
Yeah.
You know? And like, yeah, no, that one was one of my greatest teachers. Cutting that kid's ear off taught me so much. Oh. Oh. Alright, now we're coming to the end of our interview. I wanted to know if there's anything or any bits of advice, anything that you want to let our crowd know before we leave. Especially coming into, you know, like you've got two pretty big topics there, starting a food van and going into ADHD as an adult. What bits of advice would you want to give to someone going through anything like that?
I think on the mental health side of it, I think you really need to advocate for yourself. And if you feel there's something more going on than what the professionals say, make sure you push and push to get further assessments, diagnosis, whatever it is that you need.
I think that's a good piece of advice.
Because they're not going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. Sometimes you might think you're on the right track and you're not, or they're not. As much as you need to trust them, you sort of need to also listen to yourself as well. As far as business goes, yeah, I don't know. Everyone's got their own little journey to learn, I suppose, with that. And it's all different to what business you're in.
Or how you run it.
Yep, how you run it, how you start it.
Yeah.
Whether you start something from scratch or buy something existing. But, you know, business is getting hard now. There's lots of places closing up all the time. There's a major...
Canberra.
Yep, and there's a major shift now, like people are buying more online. So does that mean there's going to be less shop fronts? You know?
I know we're at the end of the interview, but now I'm like, oh God, I wish I'd asked this question. Where do you see that going, right? With your industry and the internet, where do you see that going quickly?
With my industry?
Yeah, do you see that?
I don't know, I haven't really thought of that. Will there be less events and more Uber Eats? I don't know.
Food for thought, Scott.
Yeah, definitely.
And lastly, completely lastly, is there anything you'd like to ask me?
What are you going to do with this video, man? What's your ideas behind these videos, and what are you trying to get out there for people?
I like people's stories.
Yep.
I don't think that there's enough people, you know, like back before technology, there was people's stories where all they had, you know, maybe like they had a house or whatever, but like in the end, I think that they held a lot of stock in their own story.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's less so now. I think that's less so, and this is one of many reasons why I've gotten into this, you know, so I'll open up about this one, you know, is that I grew up in AA. And NA. Literally grew up in those meetings, you know, and all I heard was people's stories. You know, a lot of them being alcoholic and addict war stories.
Yeah.
Or like the hope after those stories, you know. So hearing people's stories is kind of like the closest way I feel peace without going to meetings, because I don't really need to. You know, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm not an addict. But I still get massive peace from hearing people's stories. So it's a bit of the, you know, people's stories are still important. They don't put enough stock in them, and it soothes the fuck out of me. Like, I mean, soothes me. You know? Yeah. It, my head will be pretty quiet for the rest of the day from this.
Yeah, that's good, man.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Well, I want to thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you.
For your time today. And don't forget, everybody, hit that like, subscribe button. This is episode 11 of Stories for Experiences. We'll see you on the next episode.